So hey there fellow YouTubers, Frank Bush here again. So in today's video I had the good people over at ALLPOWERS decided they were going to send me off one of their solar generators to do a review video on. So this box here is the R600 portable power station. It's got a 600 watt inverter and a 299 watt hour lithium iron phosphate battery into it. So we're going to pull it out of the box, do a bunch of testing to see how it performs, so I get a good idea of how this will be useful when I'm out in the field. So if you're interested in that kind of content, stay tuned. Okay, so I'll just show you the specs they've got, on the side of the box, if you will. So it's a lithium iron phosphate battery, has 299 watt hours for capacity, and it's got the active voltage in it is sitting at 25.6 volts. So it's sitting about 5.6 kilograms, 12.5 pounds roughly. The dimensions are a little smaller than, a foot square or that kind of thing. Obviously you can read all the fine details here, but to give you an idea, kind of the weight and size of it and that kind of stuff, yeah. So the AC input, I believe it can handle up to 400 watts input. Now that's just power coming in off the wall, right? So you can plug this right into a normal wall outlet without issue. And then it's got a solar input, and this is, in my mind, the good part, that it can take in anywhere from 12 volts up to 60 volts. With 8.8 amps is the maximum amount of amp flow that it'll do. So we'll do some examples of that kind of stuff as we go through the video, yeah. And then you can charge it off of the car charger input, so the cigarette lighter input, if you will. Then it'll take that in at either 12 volt or 24 volt DC. So when it comes to the output, it's got two AC plug outputs where you can get 600 watts max out of it. It's got a USB output for old school USB-A, where it can go up to 36 watts max. It's got USB-C, the output, and it can handle up to 200 watt max. And then it's got the car port where, some regular cigarette lighter adapter stuff, it can go up to 10 amps. So we're going to test all this kind of stuff today. And then it's got a wireless charging that sits on the top of the box, and it's should be able to rapid charge cell phones and that kind of stuff, So we'll give all these things a test as we go through time and kind of talk in detail about each one of those aspects as we move through the solar generator and all its different outputs and inputs, and kind of just see how it really performs compared to what it says on the box, yeah. So I'll just turn around and get this out of the box, and we'll start to get on with the actual testing of things. Okay, so like I say, I'll try not to do a long-winded unboxing of this. I really just want to get down to the testing and that kind of stuff, but either way, just to show people that are interested in kind of what the packaging looks like and all that kind of happiness, right? So got the App Store stuff. You can get a warranty to claim the warranty and that kind of stuff. We'll just take a quick peek at this. User manuals and all that kind of business. Fair enough. Like I say, won't bother going through that in detail. I'll just put that back in a little envelope. And I find solar generators tend to be fairly straightforward, so it's like, it'll be fairly intuitive. But it comes with a little bag. I'll just pop open the bag and see what's inside. So I've got a plug that plugs into the wall. And that's the only thing in the bag at this time. We'll pop this protective foam. Pull out the unit. And I'll just make sure that there's nothing else missing into the... Yeah, we're good. So it's just a bit of protective foam, keeping it, so it doesn't get damaged in transport. Fair enough. And it's good quality foam and all that kind of stuff. So I'll shift camera angles now, and we'll come in close on kind of the face of it and that kind of stuff, and show you exactly what it looks like up close and in detail, yeah. Okay, so I just propped it up on a box to get it, better camera angle and that kind of thing. So like I say, we got the wireless where you can just drop your cell phone on the top. It's got the cigarette lighter plug where I can plug in 12 volt devices here. I've got AC, like you'd plug into the wall right here. There's two of them. And then a little power on for the AC section. There's a power on and off for the DC section. So then we've got two USB-C that is stated for 100 watts. And then we've got the USB-A, which is, normal old school USB. And it says 18 watts here. So we'll test to see if each one of these individually is providing 18 watts. Because really what it is these are all 5 volt devices when you're dealing with USB. So, 3 amps is the 15 watts. So, you know, when it comes to things, we'll plug in 2 devices and I'll hook a little meter on to see if it's 18 watts on each one, or, you know, where it's at with that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's got a little light on here, and then we'll just spin it to the side, make sure I'm in the camera all right. So see a little door on the side here where, yeah, I'll shift camera angles and show you the inside of here. 2 seconds. All right, well, I'm just kind of holding the generator, give you guys a nice angle here. The cord that it came with in that bag, and then the bag was pretty nice, but the cord that it came with just plugs into right here, and it's good. We don't have like a charging block and that kind of stuff, yeah, which I enjoy. I'd rather just have cables that are fairly standard and that kind of stuff. And then it's got an AC overload protector button that you can press here, and then it's got the solar input, and this is the XT60 connections. So if you're not familiar with those, they're just a different connection that allows to have higher amperage run through them and that kind of thing. So I actually think that that's a good call when it comes to that stuff. So like I say, this door just kind of closes. I'd actually prefer if they use like the rubber door, to be honest, because when this thing's opening and closing all the time, I can see that this will probably snap off as you move through time. I mean, it's not a GameStop or anything, but I do like the kind of rubber doors that they put on here, you know, that kind of style. So it'd be kind of cool to see it where it had the same on here. Of normally I find any of these thin plastic doors, they just snap off as you move through time, especially when you're out in the woods and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I'll show you the back. Fairly plain, not much to it. Just shift that up a bit. And on the side here, lots of good ventilation. I can see they put some funky green tint to it, so that's kind of cool, you know. But one way or the other, one of the key things is that there's good airflow going through these units, you know, and it's the same on this side too, where they've got the good airflow and stuff. So we'll see how the fans kick in, how loud they are and that kind of stuff. But normally when it comes to any of this stuff, you know, electronics get hot, you want to have good airflow to help keep things cool. Yeah, so that kind of gives you just a preliminary surface look at it. You know, all in all, it seems like nice quality. It's all plastic and that kind of stuff, which I prefer over the metal, even though I know metal can be more durable and that kind of stuff. When you're packing this stuff out, you know, off-grid or out in the backcountry and that kind of stuff, weight is always a factor. So knowing that this thing is well below 20 pounds to me is one of the critical gains of a unit like this. You know, ideally, if you're wanting to do conveyance and you're wanting to go off-grid, you know, weight always becomes an issue. So it's more just how much power production and performance can I see coming out of a unit this size versus the weight that it is, because you're having to lug it around, you know, through the backcountry. So one way or the other, we'll just start moving on. I'll go pull some stuff out of the house that we can start plugging into this, and we'll, you know, turn it on here, see if it's even got a charge. I might have to speed charge this thing if it came dead. We'll see. So yeah, I'm not seeing any power lighting up at all on the screen. So the battery in this might just need a full charge. I'll plug it into the wall and we'll just see what it has to say for itself if it lights up. Yeah. All right, like I say, I just dragged it back into the house, and it's got a little protective cap that goes over the, you know, cord that plugs in. And the cord's about, looks about 3-4 foot long, so it's not too bad. And just, as you can see here, now this end will just plug into here. Like I say, I tried to turn this on and it was dead as a doornail. So just so you're aware that there was absolutely no, you know, I can press this for a minute, it's not going to light up or anything, right? So one way or the other, I've got my living room powered off, solar power and that kind of stuff. So I've got an AC out. I'll just turn around and plug this in and see if we get any change in effect, and I'll switch camera angles to see what I'm seeing, if you will. Okay, so like I say, I plugged it into the wall and stuff. Took a second, I heard some clicking and stuff. I guess the battery was just absolutely dead in this, which fair enough, it's better for shipping and stuff, but normally lithium iron phosphate batteries tend to be at their prime if they're sitting around 50% when it comes to longevity. So I don't know how good it is on the battery for it to be sitting dead, but I understand it's safer for transport and that kind of stuff. So right now it shows that I'm only doing 69 watt input, and I'm going to let that run low. I'm going to check the app. We'll turn around and install the app and let this kind of slow fill because it's 0. But as far as I understand it to be, you can adjust the rate at which we're pulling off the wall. Like right now, to be pulling, 70 watts pretty well. You're looking at, 4-hour charge time when it comes to having it plugged into the wall, which is pretty long from what I understand for this unit. Yeah, it's slowly climbing up on its own accord, right? So, if we took 4 hours, that'd bring it up to 280 watt hours. That would be stored into the battery. So, right now, it's like I say, looking at about a 4-hour charge time, but I don't want to push it really hard, especially on the first charge. I just want to make sure that this thing kind of fills up. And as you can see, it's already automatically jumping up. So that'll be the battery management system built into this, protecting the battery when it's at a really low state. So I'll let this run for a little bit and just see if it automatically jumps up to, full charging as it goes. And I'll cut back, yeah? But one way or the other, you can see we're just taking a charge off the wall. Pretty basic. Okay, and as you can see, once the batteries start taking a charge, the watts start climbing up and stuff. So, it's one of those things of I'll show you periodically as we go through, but yeah, just slow charges and when the battery's totally dead to protect the battery. So I'll talk about all the different protections that this unit has as well. I'll just pull up the specs and kind of walk through stuff a little bit in that regard. And like I say, as we go through the charge, we should see this jump up closer to 300 to 400 once it gets into that kind of main body of the charging cycle, yeah? So one way or the other, let me just go pull some additional specs and we'll kind of mention those in the video as well. So then you can see exactly as I was saying, once we get, up into a higher level of the battery being charged, the watts coming off the wall, jump up and that kind of thing. So like I say, this unit holds 299 watt hours. So at 284, this is going to take, an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour to charge off the wall, to give you an idea of the speed, right? So it's really rapid in that regard. But one way or the other, we'll just let the cycles keep rolling. And like I say, I'll go pull all the specs when it comes to the overcharge protection and all that kind of stuff. So you can see now we're charging at over 300 watts an hour, and this unit can only hold 299, so it'll be less than an hour for that to be fully charged, yeah? But either way, so I'll start talking about kind of some of the protections that it has built into it. So it's got high temperature protection, so if it gets too hot, this thing will kind of shut itself down to protect the battery and all the circuitry inside. On the same, it's got low temperature protection. So the thinking really is when it comes to charging a device like this, you don't charge it below freezing temperatures. Then you can discharge it up to, a little bit below freezing. But generally speaking, you don't want to charge and discharge this unit, when it's down around freezing and that kind of thing, yeah? So it's got over discharge protection. So if it tries to pull too much current out of itself too quickly, it'll protect itself and shut down. The same when it comes to charging it up. If it wants to charge it too quickly and the battery wouldn't be able to handle it and that kind of stuff, it'll protect itself. It's got overload protection. So, if I turn around and put 1,000 loads on the 600 watt inverter that's inside there, it'll trip and, protect itself. It's got short circuit protection and overcurrent protection. So it's really just it's got a bunch of protections in there that kind of protect it from cooking its own self by running it too hard or running it in too cold of an environment and that kind of stuff, yeah? So, like I say, one way or the other, this is a bit of a process. I'm just going to turn around and let this go through its cycle. I'm trying to connect to, via Bluetooth with my cell phone to the app. I just went into the manual. Hold on 2 seconds. I'll shift camera angles and show you what I'm talking. So, in the manual that they sent over, it's got just a little scanning code that I can use, the QR codes, if you will, to either connect to iOS and Android. But because I already have ALLPOWERS equipment, I've already downloaded the app. And now in my phone I'm looking at the Bluetooth, stuff that's around me, and I can't seem to connect to any of them. So I don't know what to say when it comes to that. I'm kind of doing that off scenes, but see if I can actually make connection of this unit to my cell phone, yeah? Okay, so it's just chugging along and it's charging. And I'll show you something that's a little bit counterintuitive when it comes to setting up the app and stuff. There isn't a Bluetooth button on this device to enable the Bluetooth to be active inside it. You have to press and hold the DC for 3 seconds. And hopefully you see that. It lights up that little Bluetooth icon, if you will. And now, when it comes to scanning through the app, I can now turn around and connect to that device. But unless you press that on, you're just not gonna, find it in any of that kind of business. But then you can see now, I'll kind of shift my camera back a bit and pan down. Actually, I should try to keep it where you guys can see, you know, the best of both bits. So needless to say, we got 314 on here. We see 314 on here. And I can remotely control all the AC on and off and DC on and off from the app, which is good, you know. So if I'm off grid and that kind of stuff, and I've got this solar generator that's sitting over on the other side of a walled tent, or, you know, whatever kind of shelter I'm in, you know, and I'm in a sleeping bag and all that kind of stuff, I can control some of the functionality that exists with the solar generator, you know, right through the app. So I can turn around and, as you can see, I just lit up the AC. The same with the DC, right? I can power on and off the DC here. I can switch the AC, whether it's 50 hertz or 60 hertz. Turn on that LED light. I know that's right in the camera. Sorry, guys. You know, I'll do a little skim through this app and see if it has anything else, but you can see it's only been, to give you an idea, it's only been a matter of maybe 20-25 minutes or so since I plugged this into the wall, and I'm already 32% you know, charged battery in there. So it's really good in that regard. If this thing seems to charge quite rapidly. I'll just see with the other settings now. So we'll just go into fast mode and see if that makes a difference. So when I switched up to fast mode, I can see now, here I'll pan back in and show you, I'm taking in over 400 watts now from off the wall. So I can charge this thing in way less than an hour. Like I say, it only holds 299 watt hours in total capacity inside the battery. So being able to charge at that rate is over a 1C rating. So it'll charge it really fast, but I wouldn't necessarily want to do that on a regular basis. You know, batteries, like when it comes to charging these batteries and stuff, generally speaking, I just want to have this down on standard mode and not let it go above the capacity of the battery for the rate of charging. You know, ideally for longevity's sake, I'll switch this down to mute mode and just see what the power production is. And I can see it slowly dropping down here now. And, you know, for longevity of the battery, you know, if you really want to kind of maximize the life of how long this thing's going to last, dropping it down to mute mode will be gentler on the batteries. It'll make it that, you know, any dendrites and that kind of stuff within the chemistry doesn't form as badly and that kind of stuff. So, you know, running at the mute mode, you're looking at about a 3-hour charge time. Running at, you know, this is purely just off the wall, right? Running at the standard mode pushes it up to about an hour's charge time. And then when it comes to, you know, running it up in that fast mode, you can charge this bad boy in less than an hour, which is pretty impressive, but it's also hard on the batteries, right? So we've got an eco mode, not sure exactly what that does, but I'll turn that on. And oh, so if you've got like the inverters and stuff running and you don't have any load sitting on them, it'll automatically shut down the device, and then you can choose, do I want it to automatically power off in, you know, 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hour, 6 hour, that kind of stuff. So generally speaking, I like the idea of even having that on and just leaving that on, because if I've got something plugged in and I forget about it and I'm not actually drawing any load or anything, I don't want the generator just wasting power keeping my AC active if I'm not pulling any loads or anything off of it, right? It's just a way to kind of protect the battery. So that makes sense. I'll leave that sitting on the 1 hour, and I'll jump back. So the device itself seems fairly, you know, straightforward when it comes to stuff. Like I say, I'll leave it as standard mode when it comes to charging off the wall. I don't plan on making that the primary way I charge anyways. I mean, it's still charging in my mind. It's still charging at a really, really fast rate. To be able to fill this up at 308 watts, you know, running in a standard mode, you know, that's less than an hour's charge time. To boost it up, it's going to make it even less, right? So it's really, really rapid to charge this up off the wall. It's good to see that kind of stuff. That pleases me a great deal. But one way or the other, I'll just let this kind of keep charging and going through its cycle until it gets up to 100% full. And then we can start to test it, you know, loads on it and the different outputs and that kind of stuff to see what the capacity of them is, yeah? Okay, and I'll just kind of mention too, like I put it up on the fast charging just because I wanted to hear how loud the fan was and stuff. And I don't know if the camera's even picking it up, but the fan in this thing is fairly quiet. For the amount of energy that it's sticking into such a little unit, to be sending in 414 watt hours, watts per hour, if you will. That's a really fast charge rate when it comes to this size of a unit. But the fans that are in there to kind of keep things cool, I don't know, I'm barely even hearing them. They're really whisper quiet. So I don't have a meter to gauge that stuff, but I can tell you that it's a quiet thing. And now you'll see when it's first charging up, it says the remaining time in the app and stuff, 1,092 hours and 15 minutes, 45 days. It doesn't know yet. That's all part of the calibration process. Then you'll see it here. It says 36 minutes, but that might not be the case, right? When it comes to the first charge that you do and stuff, the battery has to, fully fill up to know what its capacity is and all that kind of stuff before it can start to calculate out what the hours of use and all that kind of stuff are. But like I say, I'll switch it back down from the fast charging and just put it back to standard. I just wanted to kind of test that here, and I'll see if I can just switch the camera in to get it closer. I'm pretty close to where those fans are now, but you can say I'm not even sure if the camera's picking that up. It's pretty whisper quiet. It sounds like a small 12-volt fan running in the background. Like it's not loud compared to some of the units that I've used in the past. They can get quite loud especially when there's lots of power flowing through them, right? But it seems whisper quiet so far. And I guess just as a simple test, I'll shift the camera angles and I'll just throw my cell phone up on the top of this unit and see if I can get it to start taking a charge and that kind of stuff, yeah? Okay, so I know when I tested the S300 unit that they sent over to me in the past, I couldn't get this part to work. So I'll just turn on the DC and I'll just set this down. See, and there we go. So it's taking a charge and it says it's fast charging. So that tells me that, the top charging unit's working without issue and all that kind of stuff. So that's pleasing to me. Then the fact that it was fast charging tells me the output should be somewhere up near that 15 watts that it's claimed. So I'm glad to see that part of things is working. It's always good when you're around camp and stuff. You want to just kind of throw your cell phone on the top of this and let it take a charge without, plugging in anything and all that kind of shenanigans, right? So that pleases me. It's good to see that's working. And the nice part is, here, I'll just pan back down a bit I know my cell phone was fairly full, but one of the things I really like about this unit too is it's got the power coming in, but it's also got the power going out to the cell phone. And you can see right now the cell phone, through that kind of wireless connection there is charging the cell phone at 8 watts. So that's good. In that regard, I'm pleased to see that all functions. And I'll just turn this off and see. As soon as you turn off the DC, it drops that wireless on the top too. So that's good to know, right? And like I said, I had the fast charging running, so I'll just go back to the app on my phone. And I really like how simple this is when it comes to using stuff, right? So I'm just going to drop that back down to standard mode. And we should see the watts getting thrown into the cells, starting to drop back down closer to 300, right? Which is still, like I say, for a battery this size, it's still incredibly fast. Normally, I'd be a little leery about charging because of dendrite issues. So they're like crystalline formations that happen inside the battery and cause damage. If you then are drawing too much current and that kind of stuff, or throwing too much current into a battery, you can cause damage to it by crystallization formations in the chemistry of the battery and that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to go into full detail about that, but generally speaking, as a general note, it's better to charge things lower than what the maximum capacity is. It's just better for the cycle life of the batteries, yeah? So I won't carry on with the rant though. I'll cut back once this is fully charged, and we'll start to use it and do some testing with the outputs. All right, well, we're at the 85% mark now, and you can see the wattage is starting to drop on the input. Now that'll be the solar charge, or the charge controller, sorry, that is throwing power into the batteries will start to drop the power to protect the batteries. As the batteries start to get filled up, the overall wattage being stuck into them will start to drop. And in the last video, if you watched the last video of mine, I was doing the solar panel and had it hooked up to a solar generator. And we saw the similar kind of thing where when the batteries are fairly full, the charge will start dropping down in the amount, and you can see it just dropped from 241 down to 228 there. Now, the closer you get to having the batteries filled up, the circuitry will slow down the amount of power that's being thrown into them just to protect the battery so that it doesn't cause any damage and stuff like I was talking about before. So even though this is dropping, and you'll see, you know, it's kind of a slowing when it comes to the amount of power that's being stuck into the battery at any, you know, single minute in time, it's actually to the benefit of the system that it's kind of doing that. Yeah. So one way or the other, I'll cut back, like I say, when it's fully charged. Yeah. See, and I just wanted to show one more example of exactly what I was talking about, where it's now dropped down to about half of what it was pulling, you know, mid-cycle as it was charging. Yeah, so it's got all this protection built into the charge controllers that exist within these and the battery management systems and stuff to automatically start pulling less power as it gets closer to having the batteries topped up. And like I say, that's the exact same thing we saw when we had the solar panel in the last example hooked up to the battery stack that I was charging. My batteries were almost full, so the actual power that it was sticking from the solar panel into the battery stack had dropped to about 50 to 60%, which is, you know, similar to what we're seeing here, right? So that's consistent behavior to be aware of. You know, there's nothing wrong with your equipment in that regard. It's just the way that the equipment protects itself from, you know, being overcurrent charged when it gets to the end of the battery being charged up and that kind of stuff. So it's absolutely normal. There's nothing, you know, wrong with your system or anything. If you see fluctuations in that, it really depends on the chemistry of the battery and where it's at and that kind of stuff, and how the battery management systems protect those batteries. Okay, so now I'll just kind of show you. We're at the 99% mark, and you can see now we've dropped all the way down to 75 watts being stuck in, yeah? And when it comes to the remaining time and stuff, we still have it saying like 1,092 hours and that kind of stuff. Once it fully fills up the battery to its max, and really the longer it's going to run at this 99%, the better, because what that tells me is the cells in there can handle more than the capacitance that was originally expected. So if this runs for, you know, 10 minutes at 99%, that's okay. But what'll end up happening is the software will recalibrate based on what the true capacitance of the cells are and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so one way or the other, we'll just let this thing, you know, run at its 99% and kind of fill up to the max. It still says it's got 5 minutes left, and it was filling up before at about 1 to 2% per minute. So, you know, like I say, it's one of those things, when you get to the end of the first initial charge cycle, it'll recalibrate itself and kind of figure out exactly what its true capacity is and all that kind of stuff to give you more accurate readings, right? It just doesn't know how good the batteries are, if you will, that are connected to it, the battery cells, until it's actually fully charged them up that first time and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so one way or the other, I'll just let this run at the 99%, and when it actually reaches the 100%, I'll show you the, you know, the change of the you know, measurements and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay there, fellow YouTubers, so we managed to get up to the 100% mark. As you can see, it's fully charged now, 0 watts going in and all that kind of stuff. And on my cell phone, on the app, you can see now the remaining time is 102 hours and 20 minutes, or 4 days and 6 hours. So it recalibrates, yeah? It ran for about another 5 minutes or so between the 99% and the 100% and that kind of stuff. And there's a few items that I'm going to talk about in the next scenes. One of the features that this thing has, I don't plan on utilizing it too much, but there's a UPS, so uninterrupted power supply, that exists as a component within this mechanism as well. And that's really the concept that if I plug any devices into here and, you know, I'm running them and then the power goes out, that those devices will just seamlessly keep running until the battery runs out on this unit. Yeah, so it's good in that regard to have that kind of functionality where if you wanted to have it just as kind of emergency backup where you plug your devices directly into this. This just plugs into the wall and sits as such. You know, you could validly use it for that. Generally speaking though, the lithium iron phosphate batteries for longevity sake like to sit between about 20 to 80% in their cycle life. So it's more beneficial to use this in the ways that I would, in my perspective. But either way, that's just a really added bonus kind of component that exists, that it can do the UPS functionality. And I'll plug in a few AC devices before I go dragging this out into the yard and show you guys exactly what I'm talking about in that regard. Okay, so what I have here is just a little space heater that I've kind of dragged out to show as part of the example. And this little unit uses about 400 watts. And it's an AC powered unit, so, you know, it just runs the normal wall power like you plug into the wall. So we're just going to pop open one of these little doors. We're going to kick on the AC and plug this in. And we should be able to run this without issue. The inverter that's in here that goes from the battery out to wall power, if you will, can handle up to 600 watts. So with most of your devices, if you end up looking at your device, you'll see little stickers on them and stuff. It'll tell you exactly how much power that the device is expected to consume. And that way it gives you a good idea. I mean, you're not running microwaves or anything with a unit this small. That's not what this is intended for. But I'll just kick this on and kind of show you now. We see the power output starting to pick up. We're at 300, 450, 500. So even though this is rated at a 400 watt unit, and I can feel the heat coming off that, hopefully you can hear the fan blowing the heat off this little heater. You can see the initial peaked up to about 500. Now it's dropped back down to about 420 or so. Yeah, so this unit's able to handle that without any significant issue at all. The inverter that's in it's, you know, easily made and designed to be able to handle that level of capacity. But what I'll do is I'll just kind of pan over to the side a little bit so you guys can see. Now I've got the AC plug where it's plugged into the wall here, and what I'm going to do to show you this kind of uninterrupted power supply of what I'm talking of, this heater should just keep running even if there was a power outage. I'm just going to unplug the AC power from here, and you can see the unit didn't stop producing heat. The electricity didn't stop. That's the UPS kind of aspect of this component. You know, if you're plugged into the wall, it'll allow through power. So it'll allow power that's coming off the wall to flow straight through and out to your devices. When it comes to as soon as the power gets dropped, you know, as you can see, I've just unplugged the power cord to the generator here. It automatically, within, I think it's 10 milliseconds or something, you know, just a fraction of a second, if you will, it'll automatically just switch over to relying on the batteries from this unit to draw the power that it needs, yeah? And you can see now that it's kind of come up to temperature, it's dropped a little bit, and the battery's starting to drop, right? So, generally speaking, when it comes to running a unit, you know, about this size, I wouldn't tend to go much larger than anything around that big when it came to anything I'm plugging into, you know, the AC power in that regard, because simply because the battery capacity within this unit is the 299 watt hours. So if this unit is running at 400 watts, every hour it's going to want to consume about 400 watts worth of power, yeah? So it's not even going to be able to, this generator isn't going to be able to run this little heater for even an hour's length of time before it's simply just going to run out of capacity in there. So it gives you an idea, hopefully, of, you know, when it comes to, yes, you can plug things in up to 600, and we'll plug in some other devices to see if we can really kind of push this to its limits, if you will, and trigger it to, you know, go into its protection modes and that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, because I'm only going to be able to run a little unit like this for less than an hour, is it practical to be using these things, you know? If you're only running, say, like a little skill saw or something along that lines, where you're drawing a couple 100 watts and you're doing it at 5-10 minutes at a pop, just to cut through a piece of wood or whatever, you know, it's practical in that regards. But when it comes to things like heaters, if you want this thing putting out heat for the next 8 hours, well, this unit's simply not going to be able to handle that. The battery in it just doesn't have the capacity. And in a future video, separate from this one, I'm going to show, I've done some battery reviews in the past. I'm going to show how we can really easily expand the battery capacity and capabilities using this generator by simply being able to easily hook up batteries like the lithium iron phosphate batteries I've shown in previous videos, simply be able to hook those up and get those to work with this unit to really kind of extend its viability when it comes to those types of things. But like I say, one way or the other, you can see even just after a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, we're already down to 93%. That, when it comes to running high-powered AC units for long periods of time, this unit really isn't designed to do that, yeah? But one way or the other, I'll go grab another AC unit and we'll see if we can push this right up to where we'll trip the breaker, if you will, to, get the protections working and that kind of stuff, and see if we can even pull off using this for a few other things. Okay, so now for the next example, I've got this little tiny hot plate, yeah? And its rating on this is for 1,000 watts. So I've just plugged it into the AC the same as I did the heater there. And what I'm going to do now is just turn it on its lowest setting and see if it trips it. And right away it jumps up to 816. You can see that tells me now, that alert says, hey, you requested too much power. It shuts itself off now to protect itself, yeah? So I'll drop that back down. Now when it comes to the AC, I'm going to just turn that off. It should light back up again. You can see the little light came on. It's just that simple if you do kind of overdraw the amount of power, and we'll do that one more time to show you. It reaches up to about 816, so 815 or so. So it touched 800 watts and then it just drops, right? It just can't handle that level of load. So fair enough. And I can feel a little bit of heat coming off of that element where it tried to, but it just doesn't have the capacity. This unit can only handle 600 watts. So, when it comes to running hot plates and that kind of stuff, it's not gonna do the job for you in that regard, right? It just simply won't be able to handle that kind of load. And it shuts itself off to protect itself, which is exactly what we wanted to see, right? And if I turn it back on, I can see the light came back on here. I won't bother turning on the element again because you could see it just can't handle that. So if you're looking at being able to, run hot plates and that kind of stuff, they have different models that can handle higher levels of power than this. This is really the lightweight, portable, taken to the backcountry version. Like I say, this thing weighs less than 15 pounds, right? It's really lightweight in that regard for what it offers. But you can see there's limitations. But when it comes to cooking and that kind of stuff out in the backcountry, there is other ways that I actually prefer to go about using because they use way less power than, a standard hot plate would in that regard. And it allows me to cook meals and that kind of stuff. So we're going to shift now. And I just, like I say, wanted to give you an example of the AC stuff. And really, even if it can handle up to 600 watts, because the capacity of the battery is only 300 watts, it's just not that practical when it comes to being able to run like large items like this. If you wanted to plug in shavers and that kind of stuff, maybe a cooler for the fridge that uses about, those little 12-volt coolers, they use about 50 watts and that kind of stuff. So, you could keep a cooler running for, I'm going to ballpark 8-10 hours, that kind of thing, in around that realm, right? That's the level of kind of function that this size of a solar generator is capable of. So, like I say, don't get unrealistic expectations when it comes to how much performance you're going to get out of the size of things. This is realistic when it comes to things. If anything, I feel like it's performed pretty well in that regard. So, but the main reason why I would want to use a solar generator like this out in the field doesn't really have to do with the AC. It's primarily to do with the USB and the secret lighter adapters and that kind of stuff. So as part of the next scenes, I'll shift over to the backyard so we can just kind of get out into the, sunshine and that kind of stuff. And I'll show you, running the outputs of those types of things. And then we'll look at plugging in solar panels and stuff once we drain the battery back down a bit and see what kind of level of production we can actually get out of this when it comes to input from the solar, yeah? All right, so I just moved out into my yard here and kind of moved into just a shaded area where I can see things okay. And I might have to come in a bit closer here and just adjust cameras as we go, but I've got 90% on the battery at this point in time. So you could see those heaters and running the hot plates and stuff really drain these batteries fast, when it comes to the capacitance and stuff. But here I have my trusty little 12 volt immersion heaters, and we're going to turn around and plug in to the cigarette lighter adapter here now. And I've just got a cup of coffee down below, and I'll take a temperature reading of that now. Here, I'll even shift you and just aim you down and take a temperature reading of that coffee now to show you that it's ice cold to begin with. So it's sitting at 68.7 degrees Fahrenheit, so 20 degrees Celsius, give you an idea. 19.7 Celsius, 67.5 Fahrenheit. So, you know, the water's room temperature, if you will. And I'll see if I can kind of set this back, and you guys will just have to trust me when it comes to reading the numbers that I'm seeing on the screen. But the thinking is really simple. I'm just going to turn around and look at the time for a second and say, okay, we're at 12:40 right now. I'm going to plug in to the 12 volt cigarette lighter adapter and make sure that that's on. And I'm just going to feel. So I wasn't able to run my little immersion heater, and I'll try that again, see if it'll come up to speed. So it's saying it's reaching about 140 watts. When it hits about 140 watts, it drops off. So unfortunately, I'm not able to run my immersion heater, and I can feel like it's hot to the touch. It's able to reach that, but it's pushing above the 120 watts that this unit is rated for. So unfortunately, I won't be able to run my immersion heater. I'll give it one more shot. Climbs up to 141, and it trips off. So yeah, that's unfortunate. I won't be able to run that. And I'll just unplug this now and make sure that my DC is off. So I won't be able to do a quick brew coffee using this. You know, that's an unfortunate reality. But I'll turn around and grab another 12 volt device that I have and see if we can plug that in. Maybe I'll make myself off a pot of soup instead. Okay, so I just went and grabbed my 12 volt little cooking pot. I've shown this in lots of previous videos, and we'll give that a shot to see if we're able to run that off the 12 volt cigarette lighter. And just plug that in and turn that on. So I can see 127 watts. So it won't run these devices. Anything as soon as it goes above 120 watts, 10 amps, that's the absolute threshold it hits at. And what I find when it comes to these, here I'll go once more, 127, 120, yeah, 127. So it's got a really strict threshold of 10 amps as the max, which is unfortunate. It makes it that I can't turn around and use that cigarette lighter adapter to run any of my cooking gear and that kind of stuff without getting into kind of further complications. So there is ways around that where I can get a little AC plug that goes out to a cigarette lighter barrel adapter and that kind of thing, you know, which is an extra buy and that kind of stuff, and just go off the AC power. But generally speaking, with the inverters and stuff in units like this, the AC is about 80% efficient and the DC is about 90-95% efficient when it comes to the efficiency of how well you're drawing off the battery and losses and that kind of stuff. But really at this point in time, it makes it that all of my 12 volt cigarette lighter adapter stuff for the better part of it becomes a moot point, which is unfortunate. But we'll shift gears now and we'll start to look at the USP component of this unit and see what we can get out of that. You know, ideally I would say to ALLPOWERS of, if you boost up these 12 volt 10 amp and give it like a 15 amp, that would be enough to run 99% of the things you would want to run when it comes to commercially available 12-volt units like this, yeah? And there's tons of that stuff on the market, so it really would open up the doors for you guys being able to handle running that kind of stuff, yeah? But one way or the other, I'll go grab some other meters and stuff that I have, and we can start looking at the USB side of life. So there's one more thing I'll just kind of show of, you know, you can get lots of little cigarette lighter plugins and that kind of stuff. So this has a 2.1 amp and a 1 amp USB that sits on it. So if I wanted to expand the USB capacity on this unit, I could easily plug that in now and turn that on. And I see a little red light lights up here. I don't know if the camera's picking that up, but one way or the other, I can start plugging in kind of lower level devices into this. And as you can see, it'll run like little lights and that kind of stuff. And then I'll plug in additionally my phone and just plug that into the same unit. And I still have that light running. I'll just leave that sitting there so it's in camera. And I'll just plug this in. So you can hear the bang, it's taking the charge and all that kind of stuff. So I know that 10 amps is kind of standard on a lot of these units, but generally speaking, get a few amps over protection on some of the units that I've seen available, and it allows me to get out to the cooking devices and that kind of stuff. And that to me is one of the critical components. A little shift of a bit of wiring and a 5 amp difference in the fuse here, and this could become a highly functioning you know, aspect of this generator. So like I say, there's workarounds that I could do the AC to just spit out and that kind of stuff, but ideally I just want to have it all be within the single unit, right? And unfortunately with this unit I'm not able to cook and that kind of stuff, which is one of my primary objectives for when I'm out in the field, yeah? Okay, so I've got this little unit here. This is a USB tester, and it tells me the exact voltage and stuff that is coming out of these USBs, and then how many amps I'm drawing and that kind of stuff. So I'll show you a close-up on the screen and stuff. And I'm just plugging in that little light bulb. I'm just plugging that in as an example, and I'll see if I can shift camera angles and show you a good close-up on the screen to see, so you guys can see what I'm seeing, yeah? Okay, I know we get into some funky angles when it comes to this stuff. I'll see if I can kind of cover some of the light, but you can see 4.95 volts at 0.42 amps. So that's how much power that this little light bulb is using, yeah? So, you know, to give you an idea, it's about a 3-watt light bulb, give or take. And it just shows me how many milliampere hours and that kind of stuff. So it allows me, though, using this little unit, it allows me to turn around, and when I plug in kind of the higher draw devices like tablets and that kind of stuff, to see exactly how much power is being kind of consumed off of these outputs, yeah? So I'll switch over though, and instead of running this dinky little light bulb, which is, you know, it's a handy little thing, but instead of running that, I'll plug in my tablet where it'll give a heavier draw, and we'll really kind of push these and see if we can get them up to the 18. And I'll plug in my phone and my tablet at the same time and see what kind of performance we're getting with both of them at the same time as well, yeah? Okay, so you can see I've got my tablet now, and I'm just going to plug in a USB-C connection into that. Lights up, tells me it's going, and then says it's charging. So that's all triggering properly, and I'll just give it a second to see if it kicks into the fast charging and that kind of stuff, yeah? And then I'll come in and I'll show you the little meter here and show you exactly how fast it's charging. So once again, sorry about the wonky camera work, but you can see now it's jumped up to the 8.97 volts at 1.67 amps. So it's doing the rapid charging, yeah? And it seems to be handling that without issue. And then I'll just look at my tablet. My tablet tells me it'll be charged in 1 hour and 9 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll plug in my cell phone in this other port sitting right beside it and see if this drops in the rate of which it's charging while I have them both plugged in at the same time, to see if that 18 watts that they're claiming here, if that's shared across the two of them, or if that's for each individual, yeah? So just 2 seconds. I'll grab this cable and just plug that in and plug in my phone. And you can see now my phone's taking a charge. At the same time, I'm not seeing any drop in the charge rate on the tablet. It's still telling me the exact same. I'm seeing it as 8.97 and 1.69. And I can see on my phone, let's see if I can get that, I'm fast charging on the phone as well. So that's a good sign that the USB, the standard USB-A outputs that are on here are both producing at the 5 volts up to 3 point something amps. You know, they're doing everything they need to do. So I'm pleased to see that the USB is working well in that regard. And now we've got this USB-C where they can go up to the 100 watts and stuff. I'll see if I've got a USB-C to USB-C to plug in my tablet into this and see if I can get even higher power draw, but I won't be able to show it on the meter, yeah? So, and just to show on the actual screen itself, I can see these two USBs are supplying out 21 watts, which is beyond the 18. So it tells me they're not sharing them, that they're independent, yeah? Like I say, I'll see if I can go find another cable for the next one. Okay, so now I've grabbed a cable and plugged into the USB-C out, and I've just got it plugged into my tablet here, as such. And I can see now, it says 15 watt output here. Now that might be the cable limiting it. It could be that the device, my tablet's a couple years old, so it might not be able to handle going up to the higher powers and stuff. But just to check both ports, make sure they're both working without issue. And I can see immediately jump back up to the 15 again. So I'm able to plug in USB-C to USB-C, you know, and reach the higher power capacity. I don't have a good way to test this without having different devices. I could try to see if my phone will go beyond the 15, but I don't think it will. So it's pushed up to 11 watts. Yeah, 10, 11 watts, 8 watts. So it's one of those things, if I can plug in, it'll draw power, but now I don't know if it's the software, the device, or whatever when it comes to limiting that. And I don't really have a lot of equipment that would draw this up to 100 watts and that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you kind of a, you know, a test of this. Can I get it up to 50 watts or 60 watts or any of that business? I just don't have the equipment to do it. But I can see that at least the outputs are working and that kind of stuff. And all my stuff is pretty well USB-C. So when it comes to, you know, my devices and plugging in and all that kind of stuff, so one way or the other, it'll still be practical for me when I'm out in the field in that regard of I'll be able to charge up all my equipment and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's one of those things. It is what it is, right? But now for the next step in this process, I'll turn around and start plugging in some solar panels to this, and we'll kind of walk through the capacity of different solar panels and how easy it is to hook it up and all that kind of stuff, yeah? Okay, so while I'm grabbing out the different solar panels and that kind of stuff and prepping up that kind of stuff, I'm just gonna, I plugged back in that space heater, and I'm just gonna let that throw heat into the air, if you will. It's on, it's running, and it's pulling the 400 and 500 watts in that range. I just want to draw this battery down. It was exactly like I was saying to you earlier in the video when it was charging up. Once it gets above about 80%, the battery management system starts to slow down the pull off of whatever the input is of power, and throttles it back and stuff. So I'm just going to waste off some of this power to draw the battery back down closer to like 50%, and that way when we plug in the solar panels and that kind of stuff, we'll see the actual performance without the battery management system slowing things and that kind of stuff, yeah? So I'm just going to let this run in the background for a few minutes while I go off and grab a few panels and get things ready for the next part of the display, yeah? Okay, so while the solar generator is just using that space heater to burn off some of the powder it's got in it, I'll just stop now and I pull these out and kind of walk through what I'm going to show you as the next part of the video. So this here is a 50 watt solar panel, this is a 100 watt solar panel, and this is a 200 watt solar panel. Now there's connections that I'll just show you these. So these are standard MC4 connections which hook onto solar panels, yeah? And pretty well every solar panel you buy for the better part of it is going to have these as their connectors. And then I just go out to this connection, which is called an XT60 connection. Now this allows me to plug these solar panels directly into this generator. And then so I'll plug in the small one, I'll step it up and step it up, or vice versa. I'll walk through the order of them and just show you the difference of power input that we're going to see into the solar generator using these different solar panels, and talk about the amount of time it'll take for you to actually fill the generator up from, you know, dead to full and that kind of stuff, depending on how big of a solar panel you choose to go with, yeah? So that'll be the next part of the video. Okay, so like I say, I'll just start off with the 50-watt one because it's easy to handle and kind of show you exactly what I'm doing as I go here. So like I say, I've got these standard MC4 connections, yeah, and then the same is coming off of the solar panel itself. So I'm just going to plug the male end of the MC4 into the female end of my extension, and then normally you get a click, it's already set in. And now the same again, male and the female, push it in until you hear the click. Should be the click there. And now I'm ready to feed this off. And now I'll stop and show you on the side of the solar generator here of exactly where this plugs into, yeah. So now you can see right here, it tells me it'll take a range of 12 to 60 volts at 8.8 amps max. And when I open up this little door, I just plug it in right into this little XT60 connector right here, yeah, and it's male to female, that kind of thing. Really elementary to plug in. So I'm just gonna unplug that space heater, we'll reposition things, and we'll plug in the smallest solar panel, show you the amount of power it's sticking in, and talk about time frames, you know, from dead to full of charging and all that stuff, and then we'll step it up through the different panels, yeah. Okay, so like I say, I'll show you how easy this is now. See, when you got a little solar panel like this, it's easy to kind of get around in the backcountry and stuff with something that small, right? So, you know, but there's trade-offs when it comes to anything. So you simply just take this, plug it right into the unit, and it'll start to take a charge. We'll come in on the display here and show you exactly what I'm seeing for the readings. Right now I'm seeing it at 45 watts, 46 watts, so it's producing an almost peak right now. For a 50-watt panel, it's doing well. So like I say, I'll shift and just show you the screen, yeah? So hopefully you can see that okay, of the 45-watt input coming off that panel, yeah? So, and like I say, I just discharged the generator down to 50%, as you can see, and 45 going in. So when it comes to that level of power going in, you know, you're going to talk about 6-8 hours at least to fill this thing from dead to full. But at the same point in time, you're dealing with a really compact unit that's kind of easy to carry around and stuff, right? So we'll switch up to the 100-watt panel now and just show you, and then we'll talk about the length of time it'll take to fill that, yeah? So now you can see this is the ALLPOWERS 100-watt folding solar panel, and I've tested this out in previous videos. I really like this panel. I prefer bringing this around rather than that little 50-watt just because it folds. And it takes up the same amount of space as I'm toting it around, but provides me way more power, right? So win-win. And when it comes to the amount of power it's throwing in, we're already above 70 now. So I'll shift camera angles and show you that as well. So right now I'm seeing 67, 66, 67, and I know I've got some haze and stuff. There's wildfires in my area, so the haze is kind of rolling in and out, and some cloud cover and that kind of stuff. But in previous tests of this panel, I've seen this panel produce up to about 86 watts. I think it was the peak that I got. So out of a 100-watt panel, that's not too bad, right? You always get some losses in that. But one way or the other now, just stepping up to this level, now generally speaking, you're going to end up seeing 3 to 4 hours from dead to full, you know, when it comes to charging of things, yeah? Like I say, a nice sunny day, we're talking in perfect clear conditions. You don't normally see that. Quite often you're going to see cloud cover and that kind of stuff. But, you know, even if I took this out and said 5 or 6 hours, you know, based on the conditions I'm seeing right now, that would be realistic expectations to have a single solar panel of the 100-watt flexible folding one to have that power this unit from dead to full, yeah? So now I'll switch up to the 200-watt panel that they sent over and show you that one. And really you can't go beyond too much beyond about 220, I think was the threshold of solar input. So, you know, even if I hooked up a 300-watt solar panel, it's going to throttle that back down. And I know solar panels don't give you 100% of what they're rated at and stuff. That's kind of, you know, typical for solar panels. That, but one way or the other, you can over panel it a bit, but you can't go too much beyond, I'd say about 250-watt solar panel. You're just not going to see any real benefit out of it as you go through time, yeah? But like I I say, I'll switch over and plug in the 200 watt one now, and we'll look at the performance of that, yeah? So you can see now, I plugged in the 200 watt solar panel that ALLPOWERS sells, and I did a review in the previous video, and plugged it in exactly the same way. It's just those MC4 connections, right? Just hook in, which is really good. It allows me to use pretty well any solar panel I want to plug in and hook up to the solar generator and give a charge, yeah? So now I'll shift camera angles back again to the unit and show the rate at which we're taking power into the device, yeah? Okay, so and hopefully the camera's seeing this okay. I know the glare starts to get really rough, but I've seen it bounce anywhere from about 135 all the way up to about 160. So it gives you an idea, right? Now when it comes to charging it with this size of a panel now, you're talking less than 3 hours, right? You know, 2.5 hours or so, that kind of thing. And if I was getting better sun than I am now, because like I say, there's a lot of forest fire smoke and stuff. There's big forest fires that are happening in my area that I know are diminishing the input. And I'll just step it back and see if I can throw you what the clouds look like. I got a fairly overcast kind of haze to the sky in that regard, so I know that I'm going to see some diminished kind of output when it comes to stuff, but hopefully this still gives you an example of kind of the level of capacity we're talking about. You know, in ideal conditions it'd be an hour and a half for this thing, 2 hours to charge it from dead to full. So you know, stepping up to the larger solar panels can be really beneficial in that regard, but at the same point in time you got to lug them around, right? So if you're going off grid, it's always worth a consideration for the size of the panels, you know, to how much you're wanting to haul around out in the field. I mean, obviously the bigger the better, the faster things charge, the better things just go, right? You know, and I know when it came to the cigarette lighter adapter and stuff, how I wasn't able to get stuff to run on that. There's nothing against the equipment that's here. This is rated at 12 volt 10 amp. It was able to get up to that point, it just wasn't able to go beyond it. So you know, I'd like to see this ideally have it up closer to even 20 amps, right, to be able to spit through there. I mean, for the little length of wire and the fuse that it takes to get that to that point is fairly minor, and then they won't have any more issues in that regard. But I found that with lots of solar generators, when I try to run my cookers and stuff off them, that they have a difficult time doing it. And that's one of the reasons why, like if you've watched lots of previous videos of mine, I've built out my own stuff and did it right to the specs that I wanted it at, right? But you can see I'm already 4% increase. You know, when it comes to the light, it's, you know, just a basic little light that throws on, goes up to high level, SOS, and then off. You know, generally speaking, I find these lights don't get used that often. You know, if I'm in a camp though, it can serve purpose where I can just flick that light on and off from my cell phone sitting in a sleeping bag. So if I'm just, you know, creating enough light to kind of light up the tent that I'm in, and then I want to kill it without getting out of bed, it's handy in that regard, right? And I can just keep my cell phone with me to control the solar generator. So I really like that aspect of things. You know, all in all, I think this unit's fairly good for what it is, really. I mean, it's, to me, I'm impressed with everything I've seen so far. I do like the robust USB charging and stuff, you know, and there's other devices that potentially I could plug in to utilize this a little better and that kind of stuff. You know, when it comes to future videos, I'll probably be showing this in future videos as well, just to show the expansion of how I can easily kind of increase the storage capacity in these units. With some tricks that I have that I can do to, you know, make things work better in that regard. But yeah, I'll stop here and start to wrap it up. I think this gives me kind of a good idea of the capacity and stuff of this unit, so I'll just kind of throw out some finishing comments and I'll wrap this video up. All right there, fellow YouTubers, well, I think that gives me a good enough review of kind of this R600 from ALLPOWERS solar generator. You know, all in all, I think it's a fairly solid unit. I like a lot of the features of it. I think it's an improvement over the S300 that they have. You know, it's one of those things where switching up the chemistry of the battery from lithium ion to lithium iron phosphate, I think, is a step in the right direction. I really like the way that they're using the XT60 connections for the solar panels, because it opens up the door, and it's really the voltage threshold that you can throw in there. And I'll be showing that, like I say, in future videos of some of the easy hacks I can do with this stuff. You know, when it comes to a unit like this, you know, you can't expect everything under the sun, just because it is a small little portable unit. But, you know, having the UPS in there, all the USB stuff was top shelf. You know, even when it came to the cigarette lighter adapter stuff, You know, it's one of those things of, I know I push those things hard. That's just the nature of my off-grid camping and that kind of stuff. Like I say, that's the one improvement I'd like to see in that regard, is that they step that up to at least a 15, even a 20 amp flow through there, just so there is any of the higher draw when it comes to the cooking units and stuff, because there's a plethora of those on the market, and I'd like to be able to utilize those with my solar generators than I do with the other ones that I bring into the field, the crate kits that I've built and that kind of stuff. But for the price point, we're talking less than $300 Canadian. I'm up in Canada, yeah. And when I compare the S300 to the R600, I think the R600, I think it costs something like 80 or 100 bucks more, somewhere in around that range, and it's worth every penny in my mind, just to switch up the battery chemistries. I mean, just to buy the batteries that are in this alone would cost you close to that amount of money to order them on eBay and that kind of stuff. So to get all the UPS and the USB and the cigarette lighters and the AC and all that stuff with it, to me, is a good deal. I mean, I don't know how they pull it off, to be honest, of how they can get the prices of these things so low, because when I go to order the individual components off eBay and stuff and want to assemble my own systems, it ends up costing me more than it would be for them to sell a finished product in that regard. The only reason why I like going that way is because I know a lot about this stuff, so I build it out to the exact specs that I want for the demands I have. But if you're just getting into solar generators and that kind of stuff, and you want to kind of have a little bit of peace of mind where, yeah, I can be able to run some lights, yeah, I can be able to run some small AC devices, then be able to power all my phones and tablets and all that kind of stuff during power outages, this kind of unit can be invaluable, in my mind. It really does have a good level of functionality. I like how on the R600 they've corrected the being able to charge devices, just set them down on the top, and the wireless charging, if you will. I like that all functions and does what it does. Now, to me, when it comes to ALLPOWERS solar generators, I think the R series, if you will, is definitely a step in the right direction. I could see some minor improvements that they could do to it, but a lot of that is petty stuff. All in all, for the price point, to sit back and say, well, I can get this 200-watt solar panel, then I can get this solar generator that has the capability that it does for under $500 in a Canadian market anyways. It's probably even far less in the States. That to me is a good deal. So if you enjoy this type of content, please like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Yeah, cheers.